all our attention is on social media, we do not need a website. That is absolutely not true, and I'm going to talk you through why that is. Hello and welcome to Engage and Thrive, also known as EAT, your coffee catch-up with me, your host, Taelon, where we will go through common problems and hurdles that come up in business, marketing and advertising and try and demystify them. I know firsthand how complicated and confusing it can seem with all the different acronyms and all the things to do in business. So let me try and help you be better in business. First things first, let's start with grabbing a coffee. Okay, now we've got a coffee, and this week it's an iced coffee, so cheers. Right, as always, just to answer my question, besides from customer profiles, websites is probably my second favourite topic to talk about. So I'm going to try really hard to condense this down into the best things to take away or give you advice about. And then for each of these, probably going to do another mini series to go in depth more about websites. So as always, let's start with acronyms. First one is SEO, Search Engine Optimization. Next one is SEM, Search Engine Marketing. Next one is UX, User Experience. Then we have UI, User Interface. Also, I'm fully aware that user experience, the X actually would start with an E in the language, but I'm not the one that sets the acronyms. Next one is GA, Google Analytics. And trust me, that's a whole nother topic that we could go into. And final one is CMS, Content Management System. I'm not going to actually explain each of those acronyms because it would take a whole episode to explain each of them. But again, just so you're aware of what is mentioned when we're talking about websites. Okay, now when we go to takeaways, we're going to talk about 3 takeaways, not 5 this week. And the first one we're going to start with is your audience, your control. So you would have seen recently that Instagram has had some outage time. People are talking about banning TikTok in the US. The whole thing is that if these social media platforms go down, then what happens to your audience? Then what happens to your exposure? Whereas if you have a website, that's your heart and soul, that's your space, and you control that audience and you're building that audience, which is why you would also see people talking about building a newsletter, etc. So from a social media perspective, they should be drivers to your website. If you remember, if everything went down and the whole world went down on social media today, where would you stand in terms of your exposure of your audience? Number 2 to think about is your user experience. So again, with social media, you're creating content and showcasing your content based on that platform's experience that they want you to give to the audience, right? So if it's a story and it's 30 seconds, or if it's a video and it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or it's a post and it has to be square, or however you want it to be, it's based on that platform and how they've designed their user experience. When it's your website, it's your user experience. You get to decide what flow you want people to have, where you want them to start, what's on your homepage, where do they go next? Do you talk about us? Do you have lots of video content? Do you have infographics? Do you have endless streaming content? Do you have an endless scroll? Do you have pop-ups? Whatever it is, you design that experience from every element, how it looks, how it feels, how it responds on mobile, how it responds on desktop, the colors, the sound. Everything about it is you and yours for your audience and your brand, which also then leads into number 3, the final one. I know this is a short one, but really it's so chunky and so meaty to go into each of these. And number 3 is probably the most important part. This is your shop window, your credibility, your professionalism, and your place to shine. So on social media platforms, you only have the exposure of the audiences on those platforms. Yes, you can have your target audience on those platforms and they might be using those platforms. But what about when they're not on those platforms and they're using Google Search or Google Maps or speaking to people or different countries and different languages? By having a website, you also have that ability to come up in all those other searches and other places. Plus, when you're not online and able to respond to messages, people can have your experience in your shop window. And when I say your shop window, it doesn't mean, oh, because I have products, I have to have a website. Whether you have products, whether you have services, courses, whatever you have, by having your website is your place. And again, I'm going to go back to, for me, your website is your heart and soul of your business. This should be the first thing that you're thinking about after starting your brand, creating what you look and feel. You would really want your website to be your everything. That then becomes your house of all your content, all your updates and all your information. And also, this is your place that you can upload anything, and you have less of a risk of copyright when it's on your website, right? Whereas on social media, you're actually signing up to those platforms and they have the right to use your content. So that's everything in terms of why I believe you all need to have a website and not just social media, and how the website is the most important thing. And like I said, I'll go into further episodes talking more in depth about different elements of the website and how we build them and how we create good user experiences. But thanks for joining this week on another episode of Eat with your host, Taelon. Engage and thrive, and see you next week.